Civilization or Barbarism, an Authentic Anthropology by Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop. He adds, Weinreich's concept of human evolution was further developed by Sir A. Keith, then modernized by Professor Carlton Kuhn in 1962. But these authors never took into consideration the possibility of prehistoric migrations. This omission seemed unacceptable to many prehistorians and to myself. Since 1962, I have developed another polycentric diagram of human evolution. Thus, for Thoma and the defenders of the polycentric thesis, modern man originated several times from different Paleanthropians in widely separated areas of the ancient world during the Upper Pleistocene period. Then, through secondary traits, he adapted to the ever varying local environment from one center to another, and thus necessarily underwent a cladogenetic evolution. This hypothesis is also one of common sense at first sight. It imposes itself on good sense with an almost overbearing imperative. However, this hypothesis is probably false, and an objective analysis of the facts requires its rejection. If it were true, the American continent, which is as old as the other continents, particularly Africa and Europe, and which extends from the North Pole to the South Pole, and consequently encompasses all the climatic transitions, should also be a multiple center for the genesis of humanity at the Australopithecus and Homo erectus stages, as well as at the Homo sapiens. But we know that this is not so. There are no fossilized humans indigenous to America. This continent was populated from Asia by way of the Bering Strait. All scholars agree with this fact. The polycentric hypothesis leads to the insurmountable contradiction inherent in supporting that the children were born before the parents who begot them. It is this fundamental contradiction that is seen throughout all of Thoma's reasoning, albeit he has made a remarkable display of erudition in attempting to rejuvenate and adapt the polycentric thesis. He particularly called attention to the fact that the authors like Keith and Kuhn neglected the migratory currents, and that their conceptions were thus rendered at least partially unacceptable. For Thoma, as quoted above, Africa was populated later from Europe at a neanthropic stage. Migratory Cro-Magnons, as they colonized Africa around 10,000 years ago, quickly became Negrodized due to a strong pressure of genetic selection. There can be no better example of taking liberties with facts, especially chronological ones. If the polycentric hypothesis were valid, we should be able to find somewhere in the rest of the world at least one single center of the birth of Homo erectus or Homo sapiens sapiens, respectively more ancient than the centers in Africa. However, in the case of the polycentric hypothesis, chronological data oblige us to admit that the so called ancestors of the Africans, Thomas, Cro-Magnons in this case, were born well after their African sons, and even better yet, that in all probability they were descended from their so-called sons by mutation of the Grimaldi Negroid. The latter was completely ignored by Thoma throughout his entire development, as he tactically perhaps assimilated him to Cro-Magnon, as is the current practice, particularly with the French ideologists. I'm Uriel Riley, and I stop there. We'll continue back off with civilization or barbarism. Thank you.